I went home after like my first line cook job. I remember going home and like having dinner with my parents, and every other word was a curse word, and they were like,
Yeah.
where have you
What
been working
happened?
in a truck stop? Like,
Yeah.
what happened to you?
Hi, this is Anna Gordon on Chef's Connection, and this morning I have the pleasure of meeting with the highly acclaimed chef Amanda Freitag, who has been on the culinary scene now for going on 20 years.
Yes.
And the last couple of those years, you've been able to see her on the Food Network, either judging or competing, but being an all-around culinary expert. So,
Yes.
Amanda, thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
us. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's fun to be here with you.
Yeah. So, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear how your love of food was sparked. What got you into this in the first place?
I was just talking about this recently. It was sparked by the quest for good food. Not that they meant it, but my parents both worked, and I was sort of a latchkey kid, and dinner was frozen or packaged or powdered or any of those things. And I started to work in a restaurant. And then the restaurant I worked in was one of those big, like, banquet, wedding, catering hall type things, and they had a little restaurant within it. And I was fascinated by the foods. You know, these big tables of buffets or these huge, you know, things of wedding cakes and pastries, and I was just blown away that this food was being created every day. So that was my humble teenage beginnings.
Great. And were you actually working in the kitchen at this
I
restaurant?
started as a busgirl.
Okay.
I was really good, and I think I made more money then than I do now, actually.
Yeah.
And then I became a waitress, and then they let me in the kitchen and play a little bit. You know, the one chef, he was European, and he was the banquet guy, and he would say, come here, and, you know, and he'd bring me into the walk-in, and he'd show me what he was doing, and everybody else really didn't want me in there. So he showed me some stuff, and then after that, I ended up working at a country club for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's when I really got my hands dirty.
Cool. Excellent. And then, so at a young age, you were kind of demystified of the kitchen. It wasn't so intimidating.
Yeah, and a very on a surface level.
Yeah.
I really didn't get the good stuff until I went to school.
Great. And you went to CIA.
I did.
And what was your inspiration for going there?
My home economics teacher. I was like her star student. I was the only person who liked home ec because we could cook. Yeah. And I was really the only person who stayed awake during that class, you know, so she loved me. And then the idea of college was like, 4 more years of high school? Forget it. I don't want that. So she told me about school. And then myself, my parents, and her, they used to have these things called the Taste of the CIA, where you could go up there and you could see the grounds and you could see the school, and they would make food, and all the chefs would walk around in their toques and their neckerchiefs, and, you know, you could see the chef heaven, and that's what it was to me. I was like, wow, you can go here, you can be like them, you know, it was otherworldly to me, and so that's when I really wanted to go. And at the time, you were not accepted unless you had a year's worth of cooking experience under your belt. So didn't matter how much money you had, you had to have the experience. So I had to work. I worked a year at this country club, and then I was accepted. And I was actually one of the youngest people in my class.
Oh, wow.
Now, culinary schools are very different. You know, I was going to school, I learned a lot from my fellow students as well. I was going to school with already restaurant owners, business owners that had gone back to school to try and improve. The average age of my class was probably 26, you know, which meant there were some guys who were in their 40s, and, you know, I brought that average down because I was pretty young. So it was a different time.
Were you... What was the ratio of male to female at that time?
5 to 1.
Excellent.
I had a good time in culinary school.
I bet you did. Do you think that how you're saying the time has changed now, where nowadays, like, if you have the money and you know, you can just go, and there's so many career changers and people that are going to school now, do you think that has changed the culinary world at all, like the scene?
I do. I do think it's changed a bit because people aren't working first, finding out what it is that goes on in a restaurant kitchen. What I find, and I like to mentor people. I take interns, externs. I've worked with a lot of career changers, a lot of people who gone back to school and wanted to just be in this world. And the onset of food television and all that stuff changes the idea of what our industry is, and it has changed our industry too. There's many more facets.
Yeah.
But what I find is career changers coming to me and saying, I love to cook and I want to be in a kitchen. And when you cook at home or you cook for your friends or you cook a dinner party, you're touching every part of the meal. Start to finish, you're composing the menu, you're touching everything, you're creating it, you're making this bounty,
Yeah.
When you work in a restaurant, what people don't understand is it's broken up into elements. There's your garde manger, your salad station. There's your sauté, your vegetables, your hot. You're doing one thing, you're doing it all night long, and that's it. If you're lucky, you'll maybe see what the other guy next to you is doing, and you'll maybe see a plate go out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
But until you're at the chef level, you're not touching every part of the meal. So I think that's a big thing that needs to be demystified. That you're going to go into this industry thinking you're going to have a hand in everything.
Yeah.
You're going to make one thing all day long and you're going to go home completely unsatisfied.
Yeah. Sore and
right.
Yeah.
It's like you have to learn to be a technician first. And I've seen a lot of people really confused by what goes on. Like looking at something else on the other station or trying to find out what's going on in the dining room. You need to focus on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting some people really get it.
Yeah. And
have eye-openers and they say thank you for kind of showing me, or some people just try and push on and push on and push on, and it's a struggle. I see it being a struggle. And then there's of course some people who are naturals and they're meant to be there.
Right.
So
Right.
I see a lot of it more now than ever.
Yeah.
Career changers.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a lot of ego that goes into some of that as well that can be
Well,
hard to...
yeah, I think what happens is people come in with a lot of ideas. These are big ideas, and they're mature people. I mean, they've already had one career. They're coming into this, big ideas and, big, bold egos because they know they have to be strong and confident. But when you start at the bottom in a kitchen, you sort of have to keep quiet and keep your head down and do your job. And that's where I think it's not just kitchen work. I think this next generation just wants to go from zero to running the company.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good stuff in between.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you want to get there fast, but there's all this really good stuff.
And it's part of it, and it makes 100 more valuable. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade all of my experience for anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
So speaking of your experience, let's
Yeah.
backtrack back
All
to
of it.
So way back at the beginning,
Yeah.
when you graduated CAA, you went and worked for Jean-Georges.
Well, yes. I mean, I graduated and then I did, crazy young person. Like I went and worked in the Florida Keys and then came to my senses. And then in 1992, I worked as a line cook at Bong,
Okay.
which was an amazing experience for so many different reasons. At the time, Jean-Georges only had 2 restaurants. That's right, people. 2. 2 restaurants. He had Bong and JoJo. So it was he was one day at JoJo, one day at Bong. So if I came in early, which I did all the time, I had the opportunity to actually work with him, cook with him.
Yeah.
He would be in the kitchen. He had his hands in everything. So I was really lucky, and I was the only girl on the line at the time, which was also a huge challenge. Really hard.
Yeah.
Really busy restaurant. Really intense at the time. Like, it was scary every day. Every day was scary. And every day was 13 hours of just hardcore intensity.
Oh.
Yeah, it was great though. It was great. And, working with those flavors, it was Thai French. I learned a lot about touching every aspect of the palate. We barely use salt. We use nampla, which is the fish sauce. We use a lot of chilies. We use a lot of lime and citrus. So it was all about these balance of flavors.
Yeah.
Which I had obviously never worked with before, and of course I knew French technique, but I didn't know all these other flavors. And it was so cool to learn the salty, the sour, the sweet, the spicy, the whole balance. And I loved that. That was a great, like, sort of first experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine you still very much use that
Oh,
now.
well, I don't use Nampla that much anymore, but I use my
But
palate.
the idea, the concept of creating a taste.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely set the tone for me, because I can't really do anything without that squeeze of lemon or that burst of acid or, you know, that balance of sweet and sour. And, you know, I really look for those balance of flavors whenever I'm making anything. And it makes a difference. I think it makes a big difference. I mean, obviously I forayed into, like, Mediterranean cuisine, which in its own way has those balance of flavors, but very different.
Very different, yeah. So after Vong, where did you go and what led you there?
Interestingly enough, I was supposed to do a project that was offered to me by this woman that worked in the Lipstick Cafe right next to Vong, Amy Sacco. You might know who she is, big nightlife mogul at this point, but she was going to open, I think it might have been Bungalow 81. She had these plans to do this, and she wanted to have little snackety snacks. And she'd asked me if I wanted to be involved, and I said yes. And at the time, her boyfriend was Gilbert Lacose, and he suddenly passed away. And she called and said the project's on the back burner. And I know this woman, her name's Diane Forley. She's opening a restaurant called Verbena. You know, you should meet her. You know, I hope you do well, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up meeting Diane Forley, who opened Verbena in 1994, and I opened it with her, and I stayed there for 6 years. Wow. So I started as line cook, I became a sous chef, and then I became her chef de cuisine. It was an amazing project. Really a mentor to me, she was, and I learned so much about seasonal at that time. That was like the explosion of the Union Square Green Market. I mean, we were on 17th and Irving, went to Green Market all the time.
Yeah.
I have like visions of the market then as compared to now.
Oh, yeah.
It's very different. You know, it was a different time. It was very fruitful. There was so many chefs, so many farmers. It was pretty cool.
Was it compared to now? Now it's packed with obviously tourists, but
right.
But everyday people, you know, just shopping for dinner that night. Was that as much there, or was it more?
I mean, to me, it was a chefy thing.
Yeah.
You know, maybe because it was when I was going, to the time of day or whatever, but it seemed very chef and restaurant oriented. It seemed very European at that time. And it just got me on the schedule of seasonal, you know, and really Diane got me into that as well, you know, and I just started to get it. You know, March came around and I was sick of what we were using and waiting for the asparagus and the artichokes and the peas to come, you know, and then after a while I was like, okay, I'm sick of those, let's get the tomatoes. You know, it's like you just felt it, and there was a certain point where you're like, I can't be using tomatoes anymore, you know, and once you get into that routine, you're in it, and it feels weird to use anything else. Yeah. You know? And I was lucky I was in this little bubble. You know, after I left, it was 6 years of being there, and it was time to move on, and I saw that the whole world wasn't doing that. You know, and not every restaurant was doing that. It was very weird, you know, to go and see somebody using strawberries in December, or, you know, a tomato salad on a menu in January. Like, it didn't make sense to me, but I got it. I understood, you know. It's like, not everybody was understanding it yet. So I was lucky to have lived in that little bubble world of wonderful seasonality, you know, and all these great ideas about food, you know, but she was very advanced in her thinking. And, you know, luckily I got to bring that along with me.
Yeah, I was going to say that. And where did you go after?
I went to a place called The Dining Room. The chef was Mark Spagenthal. I opened it as the chef de cuisine. I stayed through sort of review period, but I knew it wasn't exactly what I wanted at the time. And then I was offered, it was sort of a step behind, but I really wanted to do it. I was offered to be Sarah Jenkins' sous chef at Il Buco. Sarah was amazing. I mean, to me, it was a little gift, you know, to have had that opportunity to go work at Il Buco in particular with Sarah. I mean, it was just this perfect trifecta,
Yeah.
you know, and to just absorb a little nugget of her information, work with the product that we had the capability of working with. Everything we worked with was organic Umbrian
Yeah.
product.
Yeah.
And her skill level, I mean, she taught me how to make pasta. I mean, it's like I'm not worthy, you know,
Yeah,
making
yeah.
pasta, cutting up animals, you know,
She's
like,
incredible.
you know, it was that, again, another great base. And it made sense. It sort of clicked into my verbena experience because it wasn't just the full-on Mediterranean. It was Italian, but Italian, regional and authentic made sense because it was exactly that. The Italians would go to their backyard, they'd get what they were growing, and they'd cook it in the simplest form. So
Yeah.
it all kind of came together, and I was like, okay, this is what I love, you
Yeah.
know. So I explored Italian for a while after that.
And were you able to spend much time in Italy?
I did. I was lucky enough to go to sort of the top, the middle, and the bottom. I went and spent some time in Friuli and Trieste, and I was able to go to Tuscany, and then I went to Sicily. So I got a little taste of northern, middle, and really far south. So I got the regional. I mean, there's so much of it I haven't seen.
Oh yeah, for sure. And were you able to go spend time in kitchens and
A
farms
touch.
and...
I mean, nothing solid. You know, I was able to peek in. I was able to work a little bit with just not professional chefs. You know, like grandma, aunt type.
Well, and
yeah,
that's where it
but
all
that's,
began.
yeah.
That's where it's really coming from.
Some of my best meals, I would peek in the kitchen, or I'd ask if I could see who was in the kitchen, and 9 times out of 10, it was 3 or 4 women in there cooking.
Yeah.
Which was also like, I just wanted to be like, "Ugh," and bring that back, you know, and say, you know, you guys, you big Italian guys who are so successful, you know, do you remember who you learned from?
Yeah.
Your grandma or your mom or your aunts, you know, so it was good to see that.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing. And have you been able to travel much more than that and
Well,
take in taste?
when I worked at Verbena, I had the really good fortune of being set up with a small stage at Arpège in France because Diane had worked there. So I had that intense experience of working under Chef Alain Passard, and I was able to really get my hands dirty because, you know, otherwise I would have spent a year there cleaning mushrooms, you know, because she knew him.
Right.
I was able to work on the Garde station, and I was able to get like some true experience in a short amount of time. So that was incredible. That actually really showed me something I had never seen, that at the end of the day, their walk-in was empty.
Oh,
The only thing that was in there were 2 blocks of butter.
that's incredible.
And every single day, everything came in, and every single day we used it all.
Wow.
It was that, I couldn't believe it. At certain points, I was like, really? And it all got done. You know, in the morning, the chickens would come in.
That just seems impossible.
And the pigs. I know. And I think Americans would be like, huh? How do you do it? But
I'd
it's
like to see that happen, yeah.
very easy. It's
Wow.
very easy to do. You have a crew, you cook the food, and the menu is different all the time, obviously. And
Amazing. Did you
it's
speak
fresh every day.
French when you were there?
you know, I took a crash course before I went. And then because of the applied French every day, I started to really get it. You know, of course, when I came back and wasn't speaking it in the kitchen and wasn't speaking it outside the kitchen,
Right.
I lost it.
Yeah.
But I was really getting it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good with languages. I can speak kitchen Spanish, you know.
I was going to say.
Yeah, when I was in Italy, that's all that came out was Spanish. I tried to speak Italian, but Spanish would just come out.
Sure they picked up.
Yeah, they got it. They liked that I was trying.
Yeah.
But French was coming. It was getting there. You know, it was like, if you need a whisk and you need to figure out the word for whisk, you figure it out quick enough, you know, when you're applying it. So I kind of wish I had stayed a little longer.
Yeah.
You know, maybe someday.
Wow. So after all that, what brought you to the Harrison?
Jimmy Bradley. I was at Gusto at the time, and it was sort of a poach.
It happened.
Yeah, you know, he was looking for a new kind of fresh energy at the Harrison, and I guess he or some of his cohorts had eaten at Gusto, liked what they saw, and wanted to have that sort of Italian sensibility, but also blend it with their American style. So we met and realized it would be a good fit, and that's how I got there. And which was great, because at the time it was a really, I had been doing Italian, but I was sort of like, unless I was to explore another region and really learn a deeper, different cuisine of Italy, I was sort of like needing a fresh, creative angle, you know, and then to be brought back into that world of being able to use anything, you know, curry powder.
Yeah.
Yay, I can use this, you know, Old Bay, you know, it was fun to be able to do anything again, you know, and so that was really like this huge creative outlet for me. I was like, all these ideas were pouring out, you know, with Jimmy's sort of Americana, and he had a love for Italian cuisine as well. We made some, you know, a really great pairing. And then the Harrison needed a fresh face. We got all reviews, you know, we got New York Times again, 2 stars. We got a lot of attention. So it was a great period of time.
Yeah, that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, it was hard. You know, my biggest fear was, how do you get an old restaurant in the eyes of the press?
Yeah.
You know, why would they be interested? And that was really hard. You know, you really had to jump through hoops. You really had to make it like, it's different. Come and look at us. You know, it's really hard in this industry to have anybody come and take a look at an old place.
Yeah.
And so it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
And quite a challenge to like think that through and
scary.
pull it off, but
it was scary. I adopted a crew that had been there for a long time. I had done the same thing at Gusto. You know, and after weeding out the good and the bad, I sort of thought, because I've opened many restaurants from the ground up as well, I'd rather open from the ground up. It's so hard to go in and, you know, take this crew that has certain habits and make them understand that there's a different way and this is your way. And you, in the middle of doing that, changing the entire menu, changing the staff, and then trying to get reviewed. You know, it was an intense time, but you know, the achievement and the final satisfaction of actually doing it was worth it.
Yeah, you have that under your belt now.
Yeah.
So you've done Americana and Italian and French and a little bit of the Asian inspired. Is there a cuisine that for you is uncharted that you want?
That I want to do.
Yeah, that intrigues you.
That's a good question. You know, I love Moroccan food, and I really do love Indian food. So it's just, you know, I would love to learn how to make, like, all the different curries. You know, we worked with that a little bit. We touched upon that at Vong. You know, making different red, green, yellow. But really in the Thai way.
It's a different ball game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing a chef dinner series at What Happens When, and I had the pleasure of working with Heather Carlucci Rodriguez, and she had brought in all this food the paneer and the curries and all these different tamarinds and the lassi, and I was like, these flavors are unbelievable. And I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah.
For sure, because to me, that's something that can be totally misinterpreted and done wrong, because it's such a blend of spices. It could come out awful.
Yeah.
You know, to have that deft hand of being able to taste each and every little spice, and they all have a reason to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to learn that.
They're very bold.
Yes.
Very bold spices.
Oh, yeah. You have to be careful.
Yeah. So, Indian, excellent. I think you should do that. That's great. So, okay, so after the Harrison, is that when you entered into the world of television?
Well, during the Harrison.
During the Harrison.
Yeah, during the Harrison. I mean, I had, obviously these days, to also put your restaurant on the map, you have to do the media with it.
Yeah.
And so I had done a little bit of morning television and, you know, just talk about the Harrison and just get us out there. And I was asked to do Iron Chef. And I said no initially. on our PR people were like, it'd be good for the restaurant. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It was really scary. Scary, scary, scary. But I ended up making the most of it.
And you did really well.
Yeah. I ended up having a good time that day. I had no choice.
Yeah.
And after Iron Chef, it's funny because the way things get aired and edited. After Iron Chef, I got involved with the people from Chopped and was able to start filming that. And then it may have happened at the same time, but my Iron Chef aired a year later, then Chopped started.
Okay.
The way things get edited and aired is, not as sequential as you actually do them.
Of course.
Yeah. And then about a year after that, they called and asked me if I wanted to do Next Iron Chef. And I thought, oh, they want me to do an Iron Chef again? I had no idea what Next Iron Chef was.
Yeah.
And so I made the commitment to do that, which was a big deal. Very hard. Probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it was a great experience. I wouldn't have done any other sort of reality television if I had to live in a house with a bunch of people, if I couldn't call my friends or family, So it was all about the food in my mind. And so that's why I went and did it. And it was a real personal challenge, for sure, to compete. I don't think of myself as competitive. But obviously, if you're in the restaurant world in New York City, you're competitive.
Absolutely.
You don't have a choice. Yeah. So I learned a lot about my competitive self. I learned a lot about what I can do under pressure, as we all did. All 10 of us did. I mean, it's pretty amazing what you can do when you're put under that kind of extreme pressure. It's intense. It was an intense experience. I made some lifelong friends. It was, it was hard to watch later on.
Yeah.
And so it was, it sort of started the media chain for me, and obviously I was doing a lot of that to promote the restaurant as well, because the better the restaurant does, the more you can do then. You're busier, you can hire another cook, then you can do other things, or you can go and you can seek out other opportunities that will bring business back. So that was sort of my goal for doing the media. And now in turn, the media is sort of supporting me in it now so that I can explore all these other things, which has been unbelievably eye-opening. As soon as you step away from the kitchen for a little while, you see what's going on out there. There's a lot going on in the culinary world, and you see what you've been working on for 20 years and planting all these seeds, and how much you know and how many people know you and how many other opportunities there are outside of the chained to the stove type of atmosphere. There's a lot going on.
That's amazing.
I had no idea. I thought the minute you're outside the restaurant, you're off of the merry-go-round and nobody's going to want to talk to you,
Yeah.
And it was the complete opposite. It's like, oh, good. Now we get to have fun with Amanda.
Yeah.
Now we get to play with her. Now we get to actually talk to her and do things with her. And, wow, okay, this is more easier access to somebody who, is sort of untouchable unless you're going to the restaurant. And even so, probably not. You're coming in on a Friday night at 9 o'clock. I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm cooking for you.
Yeah.
So it's been really cool that way.
And you've enjoyed the transition. I'm sure the hours are better. And
well, it's really weird. It was incredibly strange at first. I sort of felt homeless for a while. I'm cooking a lot more at home, which is awful. I don't know why anybody does it.
Not the answer I was expecting.
It sucks. I mean, I've been in a professional kitchen my whole life.
Yeah.
It's like, where do you put the sheet pan?
Yeah.
There's my sink is this big, where do you cool something down? I am doing stuff in the window like an old lady, like I put the pie in the window. I've been catering, I've been doing private parties. I mean, my apartment became a catering hall. It's really different. I give huge props to anybody that cooks at home. The shopping alone is like, if you don't have the product, you can't cook, and it's like, I've tried all these different, I've tried the daily shopping, I've tried the fresh direct, I'm just trying to find the right balance of, okay, getting the goods. I mean, I'm used to getting a produce order, a meat order, a fish order every day. Having a dry storage, so it's been a learning curve for sure, cooking at home.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So cooking at home, and are you traveling more?
I've been traveling a ton. I traveled so much this year. I went from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
Sort of went coast to coast. I was doing a lot of traveling for Unique Eats. It's a show I do on the Cooking Channel where we travel around the country to find the most unique eats.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to different spots and we eat in the, us as chef contributors, we eat in the restaurants, and then we come back and we talk about them and,
Mm-hmm.
Sort of find what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Taco trucks to high-end restaurants to bed and breakfasts, all over the country. So that alone, which was one of my goals anyway, so luckily it combines with the job to see what the rest of the country was doing culinarily. And, I think New Yorkers and New York chefs are probably doing that as well, but it's eye-opening. We're not the only people cooking good food.
Yeah.
We're not the only people creating ideas. It's happening everywhere. I think the onset of food television and the culinary world exploding, it's great for the country because there's good food being made, whole food being made. There's a lot of farm-to-table stuff going on, and it's awesome to see. I went to Portland, Oregon, and I get now why all things Portland are cool to New Yorkers, and everything's possible out there. You don't have the economic, limits. You have young chefs who maybe have 7 to 10 years experience opening their own restaurants or opening their own businesses. So you have all this crazy creativity going on.
Yeah.
Because they can have a restaurant for $2,500 a month.
Yeah.
It's less than some apartments in New York. So it was cool to see. It's been cool to see what people have the capability of doing with less money and bigger ideas, and I think it's contagious. It's that idea. It's going on in Portland, and we go and we travel and we see that, and it's like, okay, how do we make that happen here? And I'm thinking the outer boroughs, like Bushwick and things like that. That's our mini Portland.
It is, yeah.
And I think that's what's happening, and luckily more New Yorkers are getting in the cab and they're leaving town and they're crossing over into those parts and they're seeing the creativity level.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Do you see yourself staying in New York?
I'm such a New Yorker. God, I'm addicted, and I'm it's hurting me, I think, in a way that it's I'm very stubborn. I want to open my restaurant here and I want to have my first here, and I'll do one here, and then if then I'll go somewhere else and open another one. Because all of my peers who have their empires already are saying, go open outside of New York. It's easier, not as much red tape, it's not as expensive. And it is, it's very tempting, obviously, but they're all speaking from a place of having their own here already.
Yeah.
So it's sort of no, I'm like that little kid that's running up after them, I want to do it too, So there's been some West Coast temptations, but, if that happens, I certainly want to be bi-coastal, if anything, I know it's just New York I keep trying to leave it, and I can't.
Yeah.
I want to, I can't.
No, I hear you. So I speak of your own place. Is this
Yes,
I'm
trying, working, got a business plan done, and it's just about getting money, I haven't been hanging out with the right people, obviously.
Well, you've had different goals,
yes.
In your life.
Very good friend of mine, who's a chef friend of mine, I was like, I stepped away from the restaurant, and I was sort of I don't really have that list of investors in my address book, and he was like, you hung out with the cooks, not the customers enough.
Right.
I was thinking, well, in the middle of service, when there's a party of 24 and there's 150 people in the dining room, I'm not thinking I got to walk the room and find investors. I just wasn't thinking like that. I don't know why, because I'm a cook. I have a cook brain.
Place,
so I wasn't hanging out with the right people. But hopefully, now with the ability to have freedom and network and travel and talk to people about what I want to do, maybe I can find the right investors that can help me have my dream.
That's great. Are you willing to talk about that dream? Like what you see happening?
I know. I feel like I've been talking about it, and initially I didn't want to talk about it. And like when I first left at Harrison, a couple of people were asking me about it, and I was like, oh, I want a rooftop garden, and I want this. And it was just a fantasy at the time, And I checked back in with somebody recently in an interview, and I heard myself talking about it. It's like, God, it's been a year, and I have no investors, and it was sort of like, why? And I don't know if it's purely by choice. I mean, I've been traveling. I've been doing other stuff. Maybe I'm hunkering down more now to try and find those money people. I do feel like in a very oddly spiritual way, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. So it's coming.
Good.
We'll talk about it when it gets closer.
No, absolutely. We absolutely will. And no need to rush it.
Right.
So.
I'm doing some other amazing things that I now realize will add to the project even more so than it would have if I was to have opened a month after I left the Harrison.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, it's really, it's not what I thought was going to happen. So it's been really good.
Well, it sounds like from your entire career, you're continuing to just plant seeds along the way.
Totally. It's totally, I mean, I can't even tell you. I'm, of course, you guys know Bill Telepan, and I've been able to contribute to wellness in the schools. I'm doing 2 classes at the beginning of December. It's like things that I could have never done before, or if I was to do them, I'd be going there exhausted, or I would just be kind of saying no to everything.
Yeah.
And being able to plant those seeds now and put those things into my life, and then when I do get started up again, at least I'll know what's important to me and what I want to stay involved in. Stay involved in certain media, stay involved in certain charities, who I can give my time to and who's really, worth it and important, and setting up those relationships while I can, So that's sort of like, it's almost like I've been given this breather and this reset, and then now I get to go forward. It's pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I'm lucky.
Well,
I worked hard for it.
Very hard for it.
I have. That's true. I forget about those 20 years that you were talking about of that hard work.
You did it for a reason.
Yeah, I guess.
So, I mean, is there any other words of wisdom? Like when people come to you and they're Chef, I really want to do this.
It depends on the day. I found myself sometimes saying, don't do it, But what I think it's exciting for young cooks to be coming into it now, because I didn't have any of this. When I came out of culinary school, you were a sous chef, a chef, or a pastry chef. And there was nothing else. You didn't have the option of food stylist, working in food television. There's so many more jobs now. There weren't bloggers. There wasn't Eater. There wasn't Grub Street.
Yeah.
I mean, there was none of that. I mean, really, truly none of that. So, in my mind, if you're interested in food, there's so many facets. You don't necessarily have to be a cook in a restaurant. You can do 100 million other things. We were talking about marketing and selling yourself. If you're good at marketing, maybe you can make a product and sell it. If you're good at that one thing, and you could have a food truck,
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are basics that you can get out of kitchen life that, I mean, you can take to every part of your life, obviously, but really to every aspect of the field. So I mean, anybody who's coming into it now, I think, is lucky, first of all, because if they decide, I'm not into line cooking, I'm not into kitchen life, but I'm in love with food and want to have something to do with it, they have so many options, and farm-to-table movements, and teaching kids, and planting gardens. I mean, there's so much now that can be done. So get your kitchen experience and then figure out where you're really supposed to be is sort of my advice. But if you love food, if you really love food, stick with it.
What's your day off like?
Every day's been kind of a weird day off or a weird work.
Yeah.
Like now I don't have... The hardest part when I first started not working in a kitchen was to figure out when to stop working.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's like I would sit in front of the computer for 6 hours doing emails, take a break, and then go back to it at 8 p.m. or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would do it on the weekends, or I would do dinner parties on the weekends, or I'd travel and go do a job on the weekend. And I would think, well, wait a minute, this is weird. Like, there was no actual day off.
Yeah.
So, because in my mind, if you're not in the kitchen, you're not working.
Yeah.
But that's not true. Yeah. So, I'm trying now to create days off
Mm-hmm.
and days on.
Great.
So, that's work in progress.
Do you have a preferred form of workout? You know, like
Oh yes,
You know?
I just did this really cool thing with a magazine, a fitness fix. So I've been learning.
Oh.
That was another one of my goals when I was outside of the kitchen. It's create a routine
Mm-hmm.
of working out. I did Pilates for a long time because working in the kitchen, I had a few back issues.
Mm-hmm.
Just you lean
Mm-hmm.
or you do this
Yeah.
all night. It's like you do these repetitive actions that can be really bad for your body. And going to do, high impact aerobics was not the form of exercise that I chose at the time. So Pilates is very therapeutic, but I just started doing this sort of weight training workout type thing, which is unbelievable. I didn't think I'd ever like it because it really changes your body. When you're working with weights. And I thought I was strong on the upper body
Yeah.
because I'd lift pots and pans and things, but really I was lifting the wrong way. So I'm trying to find that niche of what I like to do. I like the gym more now than I used to. That's all I'll say. I have the desire to go. It's the first step. Yeah, but I still love Pilates. Pilates to me is like something that it's like, this feels good. This is what the body wants to do.
Yeah.
The body wants to stretch and move and elongate. So Pilates is always my number one.
Good.
Yeah. Well, the fact that I hate cooking at home is probably an inside scoop.
Really funny.
Well, I have to say, all these foodies and people do it at home, like, I give them props.
But
They must have bigger kitchens or bigger refrigerators or better stores. I don't know because
it's. I deal with that too. Is it the act of like just the spatial issues, or is
think
it
it
like
is.
you just like don't?
it's if I cook a steak, my apartment smells like steak for the next 4 days. I don't have a fan. There's grease on the cabinets. You know what I mean?
You have to clean it.
Yeah, it's so true. I have this little stove next to a refrigerator. I can't. God forbid I sear something at a high temperature. It's not gonna work.
It's gonna linger.
I tell people when I do like demonstrations or cooking lessons, I say take your fire alarm down while you're cooking so you can get your pan hot enough to sear. Because people always say, how do you get that sear? How do you do that? You do it at restaurants. It's like you're just not getting your pans hot enough.
Yeah.
And I destroyed my stove recently because I had it cranked and I had a roasting pan on it and I was searing this huge roast and it was black.
Yeah.
And I had to clean it. And you can't, cleaning that ceramic stove top is a lot harder than cleaning,
horrible.
your industrial kitchen stove
Yeah.
in your restaurant.
Yeah.
That's made for that.
Taking the alarm off. That's
Yeah.
a good piece of advice.
Yes.
I have a question. As a pastry person, what are your thoughts on pastry? Are you a chef that is intimidated by someone in a pastry kitchen? And
No. I know that I suck at pastry, but I like to try. I opened a small restaurant in Brooklyn called Sete, and at the time I was it's gone now, but I opened it. It was sort of this moment in time where I was like, I'm going to step away and I'm going to go to Brooklyn. And I had this opportunity to like ground up open. And I did everything. So I did everything from making the pasta to making the pastry. And it was really fun. And actually, when I first started at the Harrison, I let go of my pastry chef. So there was this moment in time where I was doing not only the regular menu, but also the pastry menu. But I can do simple things. And I think it's key. I think a lot of chefs, I see a lot of chefs say, I don't want to have anything to do with pastry. And I think that's BS. It's like if you're going to run your own kitchen someday, you have to know what your pastry chef is doing. And some of my favorite moments was collaborating with my pastry chef. And now more than anything, pastry chefs are adding savory items into pastry. Yep. So it's like you talk about products, and you have to talk about how things work in certain different forms. If you're a chef and you don't know what a tuile is or how that works scientifically in the oven, how can you talk to your pastry chef about putting grapes into a tuile? I mean, obviously that won't work.
Yeah.
And then it will be this frustration where you can't really collaborate with your pastry chef. And I feel like every part of the meal is important, from the first thing you put in your mouth to the last thing you put in your mouth. So if pastry's an afterthought and it's not part of what the chef is thinking about, it's going to be obvious.
Yeah.
So I like it. I have a basic pastry knowledge. I know that I'm not a pastry person, because of the way I like to cook is add a little taste, and when that cake batter goes into the oven, you can't do that. So I'm also not a recipe reader. So when I'm doing pastry, I'll have the recipe and I'm really focused on it, because I'll double the butter and I won't double the flour and I'll screw it up. Right. So that's just because I'm trying to go too fast.
Right.
So I respect it. I love it. It's not my forte, but I feel like I have to have a basic knowledge of it. So because collaborating with my pastry chef is
and it's only
so
gonna make you
much fun.
Yeah.
It's so much fun for the both of you. And I think that also gives your pastry chef something extra. Because if 9 times out of 10, if you interview or talk to pastry chefs, they feel like they are the forgotten person. They're in a corner, nobody cares about them. Pastry, oh yeah, whatever, pastry. And it's like, wait a minute, you're a big part of the kitchen. If you have a friend coming in, a lot of times the chef will say, oh, let's send them a nice dessert.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not a part of what's happening with that dessert, why would you be sending them something like that?
Right.
It's like you want to be proud of everything that comes out of your kitchen. So I respect it. I like to dabble. It's not what I'm the best at.
Do you have a favorite dessert?
Ooh. Do I have a favorite dessert? I love chocolate. I'm a huge chocolate fan. Although I've been having this crazy pumpkin ice cream craving.
It's the best.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
I've been on this pretty strict diet, and I've had like this final weigh-in or whatever, and somebody told me that the Shake Shack has a pumpkin milkshake with pieces of like pumpkin pie crust in it. Okay, and I've been thinking about it for 3 weeks at least. Okay, so I've had this pumpkin ice cream. I could eat an entire pumpkin pie by myself. Really, truly, I could just mine. Everybody else go away. The guys at Big Gay Ice Cream are friends, and I sent them a Twitter message and asked them if they have any pumpkin ice cream. They have vanilla ice cream with pumpkin butter, which I have to go try. But really, I'm truly a chocolate fan. Anything chocolate. Chocolate.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Chocolate's my thing. Warm and chocolatey, you can't beat it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite savory dish? And this is kind of a death row kind of, like, do you have a lot?
Well,
like
I have to say, pizza. Well, is that
morbid?
It is kind of morbid. I'd probably lose my appetite if I knew.
I'm sorry. I mean, in the sense of like, it could be anything, like grandma's spaghetti, like last. Although that wouldn't be there either. But you know what I mean.
No.
Like
well, my desert island, there's
okay, that's a nicer way to put it.
My desert island food is pizza, because you can have pizza cold,
yes,
hot, the next day for breakfast, dinner, lunch, snack, just the crust, just the cheese. Pizza's like my desert island food. But I would say to make and to eat, pasta is my favorite thing. I love making pasta. It's like, to me, it's like, I see why, like, dressmakers like to work with fabric. Yeah. It's that pasta dough to me is like fabric, and then eating it, forget it. A bowl of pasta is so satisfying. I mean, it's just so satisfying. So I would say, like, the perfect bowl of pasta, and literally butter, cheese, black pepper. I mean, that would be it for me. But perfectly made, fresh pasta. Done.
Done.
Yeah.
Do that tonight. Well, thank Thank you.
You're
Amanda,
welcome.
so much. This is Anna Gordon signing off for Chef's Connection. Thanks for watching.